Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to 90 Day Fiancé latest news. Julia Trubkina, a star of 90 Day Fiancé, had a baby girl in the hospital 2 days ago on Monday. Many Instagram accounts have shared pictures of Julia Trubkina and her new baby girl, and admirers are leaving comments on the photos to congratulate them. Julia Trubkina's labor began like a line in a story that had been told in bits and pieces for years. Part optimism, part warning, and part the hard, private work of two people who had transformed their struggles into a shared goal. The morning was normal enough, like most mornings are, with coffee cups cooling on the counter, the dogs surrounding feet with an anxious warmth, messages arriving and leaving, and the farm's light gently moving across the fields. Then, in a little but piercing way, the normal broke, an abdominal agony so bad that it stopped the day and called for immediate attention. Brandon Gibbs, who has been in the public eye since he and Julia first appeared on reality TV, moved with a confidence that made it clear he wasn't acting. Family came, hands steady and present. They found the car keys and closed the doors without any fuss. They drove to the hospital with the kind of attention that comes from being in the most private parts of life. A mother in pain, a husband holding the wheel, and relatives sent ahead to build a spot at the edge of a new world. This baby's birth tale isn't just about one night in the hospital. It is the climax of an arc that the couple had carried publicly and privately for years. An arc defined by fertility challenges, long debates about what motherhood may look like, and the uncertain patience of two people who continued to trust that the narrative could change. Fans of the pair know what happened since they've seen it on TV and read about it in interviews and captions. They didn't know what the room would look like where the fight would finally turn into the first screams of a baby until the last 2 days. The baby was born on Monday night. She was a girl, and her first taste of the world came with a flood of congratulations messages and viral Instagram photos that now cover feeds like confetti. The hospital seemed tense and practical. The discomfort Julia had been feeling that morning got worse throughout the day, changing from a warning to the clear pain of active labor. With rapid, careful skill, nurses and doctors took their places. The pair progressed through the ritualized steps of birth, with the monitors clicking and humming. They took breaths, coached each other, and smiled every now and again to hide how serious the situation was. Brandon was there, and he was a steadying presence, the kind that matters when everything else fades away and all you can see is one bright light. Family members who had rushed from the Gibbs farm and nearby places stood around the borders of the room with calm eyes and joined hands. These were the modest, repetitive motions people make when they want to feel useful, but can't accomplish anything. The pair asked that a camera, both professional and personal, be kept away for much of the process. They wanted these last hours to be as quiet as possible. When the baby came, the room let out a sigh. The first cry was like a period after years of waiting, loud, sudden, and undeniably alive. For Julia and Brandon, their families, and the medical team who had been there for hours, the cry was a minor miracle that changed the way they felt about what had happened. Nurses wrapped the baby in a blanket, and for a few minutes, the world shrank to a small, perfect face and the things that need to be done right after a baby is born. Weighing the baby, putting it on the breast carefully, and the sweet, reassuring words of nurses describing the first steps to new parents. Brandon leaned forward, his eyes wide open, and one hand spread out on the railing of the crib as if to support himself against the newness. Under the hospital lights, he whispered the name they had selected, a private syllable that was suddenly in the public eye. Pictures started to spread within hours. Julia, still glowing from the labor, held her daughter under hospital blankets, and Brandon, with his hair ruffled, was torn between sorrow and laughter. "Welcome, baby girl." So happy for them. And finally were short and shocked captions. Fans who had followed the couple's journey through episodes of reality television, fertility updates, and small, honest posts that have become the modern chronicle of life's big changes immediately sent their best wishes and congratulations. There were a lot of comments below the viral pictures. Some were personal and sweet, while others were showy and full of celebrity interest. But there were frequent notes of understanding and appreciation throughout. "You deserved this. Welcome to the world. And blessings to your family." People will read this arrival in different ways. Julia and Brandon's kid is just another plot piece in a story that trades in vulnerability and reconciliation for fans of 90 Day Fiancé, and its spin-offs. For those who have been following their private conversations, the birth marks the end of a lengthy, sometimes painful period of uncertainty about fertility. For doctors, it is a successful delivery that needed quick action and teamwork. For the Gibbs family, this is the start of a new way of life. Their everyday routines are now mixed with the delicate, urgent needs of a newborn. Julia was meticulous in her public comments after the delivery, which makes them seem both honest and planned. She sent short, sincere messages of thanks to the medical team, her fans, Brandon, and her family for being there. Her social voice was like a new mother's language, soft and kind, direct and protective. There was also a distinct sense of relief in her posts. This relief isn't just because the work is done. It's also because a long-standing anxiety has been replaced by evidence of possibility. There were bits of writing about the pregnancy. Happy times, unsure times, and the silent, sometimes tragic times that happen when a couple tries to have a child after having trouble getting pregnant. That story made the arrival seem less like a random event and more like the logical, hard-earned reward for years of emotional work. Brandon's behavior, shown in pictures as happy, weary, and indisputably proud, was also a public sign of a private victory. He uploaded pictures and short films that were honest, like the ones where he put his hands on his daughter's little fingers, smiled widely at Julia, and the family dog sniffed the hospital crib as if to say, "I'm related to you." His social media became a public record of the private. The first bath at home, the first time the baby slept through the night, and the little happy annoyances that became the new measures of life. It's easy to make fun of the showy parts of these messages, but the reality behind them, the joy, the relief, and the dizzying tiredness of being a new parent, is clear. For a couple who have spent years dealing with public opinion and private anguish, the photographs and words were a way of saying that their private lives, no matter how publicized, had reached a point of calm abundance. There is a greater societal interest in public births. How they change storylines, how they change popular sympathies, and how they are employed as punctuation marks in the lives of famous people. Producers, fans, and critics will all see the birth of Julia and Brandon's daughter as a turning point in their journey. For producers, it's new material. Scenes for future episodes that show the characters in peaceful situations instead of fighting. For fans, it's an emotional payout that reality TV sometimes promises. The success of a family. Critics say that the birth raises questions about how real it is and how life's most private moments are turned into products. These viewpoints deserve recognition without undermining the human experience. The pair, irrespective of the cameras or subsequent edits, engaged in the physical and emotional labor of childbirth, which irrevocably transformed the trajectory of their lives in profound and intimate ways. The medical setting is also important in this story. Julia's intense stomach pain on Monday morning could have meant a lot of different things, but quick action made sure that the labor went on under medical supervision. The details, the fluorescent light in the hospital room, the nurse's steady voice, and the exact measurements, are what make every birth work. The family's prompt action and the professional team's readiness turned fear into a controlled emergency. Those things, planning, quick action, and working together to care for someone, are what make birth stories happy. They also show how fragile results can be when one of those parts fails. In this case, they didn't, and that fact is a kind of quiet heroism that runs through the whole story. There is also the private work that comes before the public posts, like worrying late at night, going to the doctor, and talking in bedrooms instead of on set. The couple's past problems with getting pregnant, which they only talked about with certain people, changed the child's arrival from a new potential to a new reality. Earlier studies may have said that pregnancy was unlikely, but this baby shows once again how unpredictable biology is and how strong hope is. It also changes the way people think about the couple's narrative. What was previously a story of struggle becomes one of arrival, but not of closure. Being a parent will bring new challenges, such sleepless nights, making decisions about school and guardianship, and figuring out how to keep your family's privacy in a residence that is of public interest. In these first few hours, the family's attitude is similar what fans have seen over the seasons. They are warm, a little nervous about being in the spotlight, and clearly ready to help. People who have seen Brandon and his family in public a lot say they are very happy and joyful. And those words are true in the literal sense. They are overjoyed. Their happiness is based on practical things like offers to babysit, drive them to pediatric visits, and help with night feeds. The advent of a kid is also a big deal for extended families that live in rural areas like the Gibbs farm. They have to change their tasks, timetables, and long-term plans. The baby's presence will change the family's routines. For example, mornings will be calmer for breastfeeding, afternoons will be focused on naps, and nights will be filled with new voices echoing through the farmhouse walls. People have reacted in both loud and soft ways. Viral photographs have served as both notifications of celebrations and invitations for people to join in on the family's private life. The comments are all over the place, from delighted blessings to questions about the baby's name to requests for more pictures and the usual noise of internet talk. The speed at which things go viral makes people wonder about privacy and the couple's ability to control their story. Who makes the decision to post a picture? Who keeps an eye on the many opinions that come with pictures of a newborn? For now, the couple has chosen a small amount of information to share, enough to celebrate and end the waiting period, but not so much that it puts the baby's privacy at risk in those first few days when they are most vulnerable. When a child is born into a family that has lived in the public eye, there are legal and practical issues that will affect future events in both real life and on TV. Birth certificates, health insurance, pediatric care, and the family's choices concerning schooling are all things that happen right away and have long-term effects. For public figures, there is also the extra step of managing their brand and the media. In the coming weeks and months, they will have to make decisions regarding sponsorships, public appearances, and how the child will fit into future episodes of their reality program. But the more important question is, how can a family keep its internal life going while the outside noise gets louder? Julia and Brandon will probably take a deliberate, planned approach that puts private milestones ahead of public sharing when it's needed. The arrival is significant not only for its logistical implications, but also for its impact on personal identities. Julia becomes a mother in every manner. Her idea of herself will change in ways that sound bites from the media can't fully show. Brandon becomes a father, which teaches him a new level of care and duty that will change how he acts in both public and private settings. Their relationship, which has been tested by stress in the past, will now be based on taking care of each other, working out timetables, and the intimate closeness of sleepless nights. For people who have watched the couple's relationship go up and down, these changes could lead to new, more stable stories. For the couple themselves, it's a step into uncharted territory where they might forget or change old stories in the bright, grinding presence of a child's needs. The first few weeks with the infant will be like a training period for the family. They will have to learn how to feed the baby, how to calm it down, and how to celebrate the small, gentle wins that make new parents feel like they know what they're doing. There is also the chance for a different kind of media story for a couple whose lives have been full of public attention. This story would focus on growth and stability instead of drama. If the couple choose to keep the child from seeing things too soon, that option will say something about their limits and the kind of life they desire for their daughter. Another option is to be more transparent and include the child in the family's public brand. This will make becoming a parent part of the continuing story that fans and producers tell. In either case, the selections will be made on purpose, taking into account both feelings and practical needs. In the end, the most important thing about what happened on Monday night is clear. A kid was born and a family changed. Julia and Brandon feel both relief and delight, but they also feel tired and responsible, which is what being a new parent is all about. For fans, the birth is a huge celebration. It's the conclusion of a long period of worry and the start of many new minor moments. For the media that follows them, this is narrative gold, a turning point that will change the way interviews and episodes are done in the future. But underneath all the outside interpretations is the peaceful, private core of the story. A mother cradling her daughter, a father amazed by the smallness of new life, and the soft, steady rituals that follow a birth. The world will keep watching the way it always does as the newborn settles into the hands and hearts of her family. Social media will be full of GIFs and confetti emojis. Articles will add notes to every picture, and producers will prepare future stories. But in real life, things will go on as they always do. feeding, napping, doing laundry, and slowly building up all the normal things that create a household. This couple's experience has taught their audience that real life doesn't often have neat ends. The birth is a bright spot in a long list of days that will need as much patience and presence as it has needed hope. For now, the most important thing is that Julia Trubkina had a baby girl 2 days ago on Monday. After that, there were a lot of viral photos and emotional greetings. Brandon's family, including his grandparents and other relatives, are happy in a way that seems real and honest. The journey to this point was not easy, and the work that lies ahead will be both normal and important. A new life began in the hospital's low light, behind comfortable blankets, and with the sound of monitors. One modest, deeply loved day at a time will be the rest of the story. The hospital hallway smelled faintly of antiseptic and citrus-scented polish. This smell had become curiously familiar to Julia in the last several hours, like the smell of a place where fate made practical plans. The station outside the delivery room had turned into a quiet hive of activity by the time night fell. Nurses were exchanging fast, useful reports, monitors were chiming softly, and personnel were murmuring low, reassuring words that sounded like small promises. The light in the room was warm, and the machinery and the people breathing in and out made a continuous sound. Julia lay on the bed, her face flushed from hard work and focus. Her cheeks were still damp from the work she had just done, and her hair was pulled back in a loose knot that showed how both practical and personal the moment was. There was a line of newness on her skin, a type of glowing tiredness that happens only when bodies have done what they were made to do and then called for care. Brandon's hand was like an anchor for her. He slowly traced circles with his thumb over her knuckles, as if he were trying to figure out where he fit in this new world of pain and relief. He was more than just a spectator. He was involved in every little manner that mattered, holding a forehead steady, repeating a nurse's count, and offering encouragement when the contractions made it hard to focus. His face displayed the great arc of the day. Hope stretched at the borders and joy wrapped in deeper lines. When the work got harder, his eyes became sharper, as if he were studying something that had nothing to do with cameras or his public image. There was the simple, stark act of being there, the ability to listen to her, breathe with her, and maintain the connection that connected two individuals in the same time. Family members around them sang in a quiet voice. The extended Gibbs family, who had driven in with a kind of practical urgency to help, stood at the boundaries of the room in that strange manner that relatives do. Present but not too much, trying to help but not get in the way. There were hands on shoulders, the rare whispered joke, the offer of tea, and later, cold sandwiches taken from a hospital vending machine because time made hunger feel more human than it ever had before. The eyes of a grandma sparkled with a solemn look that was lightened by relief. An aunt's voice kept the conversation going to help Jill focus when she needed to do breathing exercises. The daily routines of a farm, like timetables, chores, and understanding how to be helpful, turned into hospital gestures. One person offered to get a cushion, while another offered to handle logistics if things moved faster than expected. The rhythm of the work was like music that was sometimes out of tune and sometimes in tune. Of course, there were times of true pain that no screenplay or reality show plot could make better. The agony had sharp edges that sliced through the present and made the future feel both very close and very far away. There were also moments of silliness and tenderness, like Brandon's off-key attempts to sing under his breath, a nurse's deadpan humor that slashed the tension like a small, necessary blade, and Julia's involuntary giggle during a lull between contractions, which was a brief, human fracture in the armor of endurance. Those little breaks wove themselves into the bigger story, adding depth to an event that is often told in a bland way in public. When the head crowned and then the rest of the infant followed, there was a sound, a cry that habit could not have guessed would fall with such staggering impact. The cry was the kind that makes all of your worries go away at once. Someone is here, present, and aware of the world. The nurses worked quickly, their hands were competent, and their eyes were friendly. The first checks went well, as they always do. The skin was pink, the breathing was shaky, and there was a small, focused glare that seemed like it was meant to swiftly bring the world into focus. The baby's body was little and warm, full of bones and potential. The warmth flowed through Julia's arms and into her eyes, making everything quiet and sharp at the same moment. For a few minutes, the outside world, its judgments, cameras, and fans, faded away into a blur that didn't matter. There was something that everyone has always known in principle, but only experienced in practice. A mother encountering her child for the first time. Brandon's first touch was both awkward and amazing at the same time. He leaned over the cot and let his fingertips touch the baby's delicate hair with a sense of respect that showed how new he thought his own hands were in the home. His voice was a mix of a chuckle and a cry as he pronounced the name they had chosen in private and held close as a talisman during the months of uncertainty. It was a bizarre kind of ceremonial ending to hear him utter the name out loud. The sound made the words real, and the child was just a fingerprint away from him. The family around him let out a breath, and in that breath came a feeling of freedom, as if many small collective breath holds had been let go all at once. The first several hours were a mix of cautious medical choreography and awkward, sweet, happy human moments. Nurses took the baby's vital signs and weight as part of their daily routine as experts who hold lives in their hands. They wrapped the baby with a care that was both professional and ceremonial. Julia, still on the bed, watched with the kind of focus that comes with having your reality change. She looked closely at the baby's face, its little fists, and the way its mouth curled up a little when it needed milk. The nurses put the baby on Julia's breast, and the baby latched on with a yearning that felt like it had been there forever. Then there were tears that were both a natural reaction and a way to put all of the couple's prior weaknesses into this one, overpowering present. Some family members took pictures, and Brandon took some on his phone. Later, some official pictures were posted on social media. But in those first few quiet minutes, the pair wanted to keep the scene as private as possible. They wanted to keep the first introductions sacred, the delicate, early talks between parent and kid before the world came in to record and tell the story. The images that would subsequently go viral were careful. Soft blankets, unmade hospital beds, and Julia still wearing her hospital bracelet. Those pictures showed things that no planned shot could ever show. The tiredness around Brandon's eyes, the rawness on Julia's face, and the baby's fingers holding a thumb that were too small to explain. Word traveled quickly, in part because of the way photographs naturally circulate, and in part because the couple's life has always been in the public eye because they were on a show that traded on intimacy. Within hours, messages, comments, and the internet chorus of congratulations started coming in so quickly that private happiness morphed into public jubilation. Fans sent their best wishes, critics looked for ways to tell the story, and others celebrated with gifts, confetti emojis, and the usual virtual comfort language. For a lot of the couple's fans who had been following the fertility tale, the delivery was a resolution. It was the end of a long period of worry and hope, and it was the beginning of a bright new chapter. For others who had only seen the couple in short clips, the birth was like the storylines on reality TV. A challenge was conquered and a family was formed. But there was still a hint of intricacy behind the surface of the celebration. The pair had talked about their problems becoming pregnant in previous interviews and articles, but they had done so with a mix of honesty and caution. There were times when they didn't know what the future would hold and felt that the physician's comments were like maps that weren't trustworthy. The baby's coming didn't erase the months of waiting. It changed how they looked at them. It made them the soil from which new life grew, fertile, intricate, and sometimes terribly honest. In the moments they chose to make public, there was an underlying understanding that the road to this room had been paved with both hope and the need to face disappointment over and over again. That history made the happiness in the nursery even more complicated because it was full with old anxieties and new hopes. The couple's choices regarding what to disclose and when to share it became a story in and of itself. For a family whose lives have often been mediated, the baby's solitude felt like a valuable thing. They might have filled feeds with pictures, putting the baby in the public eye right away for likes, sponsorships, and story arcs. Instead, their first releases were carefully planned, with the photographs chosen to be modest and intimate in order to protect rather than take advantage of. This choice had a big impact on their fans. Some people liked the restraint, while others wanted to see more of the baby's life. The couple's moderation in this area will have an effect on bigger discussions about privacy and boundaries for children in the age of reality-based celebrity, when babies often become characters as soon as they open their eyes. Their home life changed over the next few days, with a dance that felt both old and new. Families measured their days by when they fed their babies, changed their diapers, and slowly built up their laundry, which always meant home. Brandon, who had showed a mix of cocky confidence and thoughtful tenderness before, plunged into the details of becoming a father. He learnt how to use a baby monitor, how to carry a sleeping baby in a sling, and how to burp a baby without waking them up. There were tiny humiliations, as when the baby didn't fit into the swaddle or the water was too hot. There were also small victories, like when the baby slept for 3 hours without waking up. Julia's physical recuperation had to happen at the same time as her need to connect with her new identity as a mother. The nights were long and dark, with just the glow of lamps and the soft hum of the baby's gadgets. The days were full of hands-on training on how to feed, calm, and read the signals of a being that could only talk by moving and crying. Family members changed too. The Gibbs farm, which had seen the cycles of animal births and the seasons, welcomed the visit with practical affection. People were grateful when they offered to babysit, and when they came by late in the day, they brought casseroles and a sense of old-fashioned support. Siblings and cousins stood in line to hold the baby, which felt like both a ritual and a celebration. For some, having a newborn on the farm seemed like a new beginning, a reminder of how family life goes on, and a reason to get up every day that goes beyond what the news says. The couple found comfort in the farm's regular, everyday rhythms. The soothing sounds of a place that had once been a stage for public life became a real home for the little things that make up family life. The media wanted it right away. Producers and reporters moved around like animals that need new stories to stay alive. There were offers, some more obvious than others, to include the baby in future episodes and show the family's early days as a kind of serialized renewal. The couple was carefully skeptical of these offers, which showed that they had learned from their experiences. They knew that television and social media could help pay for a good existence, but they also knew that too much exposure may ruin the privacy they wanted to give the child. Their talks about what would be filmed and what would stay private were really talks about how much freedom the child would have in a world that may otherwise write it for them. Fans still showed a lot of love for them, though. Messages of congratulations kept coming in on their social media accounts, along with the usual stream of unsolicited parenting advice. Some responses were sweet and heartfelt, like "Congratulations, what a blessing. You both look so happy," and wishing you health and peace. Others were less so, including questions about the baby's name, guesses about future episodes, and the occasional insult. The couple's reactions were polite and careful. They thanked the people who wished them luck while still keeping a strict limit on how much the youngster could see. Their public tone was friendly and protective at the same time, which made it clear that the child was a shared delight, but not something that could be bought. There were also practical issues that started to come up, such pediatrician visits, immunizations, the paperwork that every new family has to deal with, and the steady buildup of costs. Diapers didn't get cheaper because of public life. There were other choices to be made concerning childcare, and how to fit the baby's requirements within a busy schedule of public duties. The pair was used to working on schedules set by camera crews and marketing deadlines. Now, they had to be more flexible to fit in with the new home life, which was based on feedings and naps. It needed them to be flexible in their public work, meaning they had to be able to turn down some chances in favor of staying up all night with the baby or getting up early to relax instead of getting attention. Parenthood changed some of the emotional patterns in the couple's relationship. The stressors that had formerly seemed so big, money problems, schedule conflicts, and the weaknesses that come from living a life under scrutiny, became less important in some areas and more important in others. Night feedings were a shared challenge, and the need for practical teamwork turned into a stronger bond. There were fights, of course, about who would change the diaper at 2 a.m., and what chores would be done in exchange for a few hours of sleep. There were also new forms of sensitivity, like making fun of the baby's blank expressions, the silly things people would do to obtain a certain brand of formula, and the way Brandon's voice would drop to a private level when he talked to his daughter. These were the tiny stories that would eventually come together to make up the fabric of their lives. Outside of their close friends and family, pundits and analysts started to narrate their own versions of the narrative. Some stories commended the couple's strength and called the birth a well-deserved happy ending in a society where showiness is sometimes more important than honesty. Some stories were more cynical and saw the birth as a way to get attention and an edge in the algorithm. In today's world of celebrities, it's practically impossible to avoid these many interpretations of the narrative. Every private behavior can be turned into content, but the couple's choice to focus on seclusion went against that trend. It gave public personalities who are both visible and protective a different way to be. They showed via simple gestures that not every moment needs to be turned into money and that some events in life are better kept in family memory than in public archives. The most noticeable change may have been in the mind. Julia's worries about getting pregnant and the long months of not knowing what would happen had changed her in ways that no post celebrating her could truly show. The baby's presence didn't just fill a hole. It added new layers to her inner story that she didn't expect. There were evenings when she woke up and felt the pain of past losses. There were times when terror made her feel like she needed to be in charge. Over time, those cracks mended into a wider acceptance. That being vulnerable is part of being human, and that being a parent means being willing to be undone and rebuilt every day. Brandon also had to deal with the tension between being honest in public and being honest in private. He found a kind of purpose in the steady buildup of everyday activities that had nothing to do with ratings or what other people thought. Holding his daughter and feeling her weight on his chest gave him a calm power that no prominent figure had ever given him. As the weeks went into months, the couple both watched and took part in the baby's growth. Their posts on social media changed a little. There were fewer staged moments and more honest ones. For example, there was a video of Brandon trying to calm the baby down with an improvised lullaby, and there was a picture of the baby falling asleep on Julia's lap while they watched an old sitcom rerun. Fans connected with these moments because they felt real. They weren't flawless, they were sloppy, little, and bright in that everyday sense that counts most. The couple's story, which used to be full of fertility procedures and fights, slowly changed to the everyday worries of being a parent. Making sure they eat right, coping with colicky nights, and finding time to breathe. This settlement had a strange beauty to it, like a homecoming that reality TV rarely lets happen over more than one episode. The baby changed the couple's path just by being born. Plans that had formerly seemed very important, including public appearances, courting sponsors, and the next major episode, were put off in favor of early mornings and the small, precise task of being a family. The transformation felt big to people who had been watching their relationship go up and down for a long time. The couple had gotten over a hard patch and were now living a calmer, more cautious life. They were still well known, but their priorities had changed. They were now in charge of a private life that simultaneously had a public presence, which they carefully assessed and managed on purpose. People also started talking about what it meant to raise a child in a time when everything can be saved and sold. The pair was in the middle of a cultural dispute over the children of influencers. Is it right to include them in material, how to safeguard their freedom, and who gets to choose which pictures of them are shared? The couple's method was based on permission as much as possible. It was careful, selective, and based on respect. In interviews and through policy with their media team, they made it clear that they were committed to delaying the child's full exposure until she could have some say in how she was represented. People praised and doubted that approach, but it set a limit that made sense to the family even when the world wanted to see a show. The deeper personal lessons of being a parent came out in little, ongoing ways throughout the whole thing. There was the revelation of how a single person, small as the baby was, could change a couple's priorities and make them make sense again. New routines were created. A calendar that planned itself around nap times, dinner conversations that stopped for breastfeeding, and a new way of spending weekends that met both the child's requirements and the couple's need for rest. Friends helped out in many ways, like dropping off food on porches, running errands without saying anything, and doing a lot of little things that added up to a community. Those favors were more than just helpful. They were the social glue that made being a parent bearable in ways that fame alone could never provide. Julia and Brandon thought about what had transpired at calm times when they weren't on screens or reading comments. They went back to the hospital in their imaginations, not as a story to tell again, but as a deep seam in the story that would be mined for significance in private conversations for years to come. The sound of the baby's first cry became a touchstone for them, a moment that showed them that there was still hope despite long periods of worry. They talked honestly about being thankful, about the invisible experts whose calm expertise had made the night possible, and about how important it was to take care of this new life with humility. They spoke with respect, but they were also tired. They were honest about how being a parent wasn't just one big event, but 1,000 little ones that added up. There were also practical things that people did to plan for the long term. They talked about schools, guardianship, and how they wanted the child to grow up, with family as the mainstay of their existence and occasional public moments that the child might pick later. They looked over their financial plans again, this time thinking about how to save for school, pay for health care, and deal with the unforeseen costs of raising a child in a society where being seen may mean making money. This change in direction was part of what made the baby's presence not only sweet, but also life-changing. The couple's arrival changed how they interacted with work, each other, and their public identities. Months after that night, after the excitement of the delivery had worn off, and the couple had to deal with the realities of being parents, friends sometimes said that they seemed different. Their chats had a distinct rhythm, and they joked about the new words that had come into their lives, such nap time, swaddle, and spit up, as if learning a new language had changed the way they thought. In some ways, they were more patient, and in other ways, they were less showy. Their love, which had been shown to an audience in spurts and starts, grew into a tranquil partnership based on the work they did together to care for each other. The people in their neighborhood changed as well. Fans who had originally found the couple's early struggles entertaining started to feel differently about them. They sent not only congratulatory messages but also tips and small gifts, like handmade booties from people who had been moved by the story and notes of encouragement from parents who had been through similar things. Even while such gestures were little, they helped the couple feel less alone and more connected to a larger network of human experience that goes beyond just episodes and camera angles. They could trust in a wider form of support because of this web of connections. People who didn't care about their fame, but cared about being kind to others. There were, of course, times when things didn't go smoothly. There were times when the pair had to work out their boundaries with management and producers, since there were tensions over when to schedule publicity for the baby's first few months. There were disagreements about whether it was okay to accept a sponsorship that needed the infant to be there, or one that could be worked into their lives without putting the baby in danger. These talks weren't so much about pride as they were about keeping a new, delicate privacy safe. They showed that even in the most difficult public situations, people could still make conscious decisions about closeness. And yet, no matter how much preparation and establishing of limits there was, unpredictability was always a part of being a parent. Sickness spread across the house quickly and humbly. There were evenings when the infant woke up and sobbed for hours without any reason, which stretched the limits of patience. There were also the little miracles, like the first time the baby laughed, or the first time they recognized a parent's face and grabbed for them while yawning with joy. Those focused and intense gestures made the tiredness bearable and provided the pair a lot of grace to draw on. The pair thought about the path that had led them to that hospital room that night and saw it as a succession of tiny, firm choices. They chose to be private when they needed to be, open when they needed to be, and laugh when they needed to be. They had built a network of family and friends who helped them in both practical and emotional ways. They had made their way through the difficult realm of public notice with the goal of protecting a child who would inherit both a family and some kind of visibility. The baby's arrival didn't finish any stories for them. It was the start of a new series of chapters, both boring and very important. As time went on, the viral pictures got lost in the continual stream of new content. The comments stopped, and seasonal posts and gossip took their place. But for Julia and Brandon, the memory of that first night stayed strong. It was like a little lamp in my memory, giving me just enough light to find my way when the nights became long and the decisions got hard. The couple learnt to go on with an openness that was both humble and confident. They were no longer just characters in a drama presented by producers. They were now the authors of a family life whose sentences would be penned in modest acts of caring. Years later, when the tabloids had calmed down and people questioned them about the baby's arrival in interviews, they said the same quiet thing. That delivery had been a teacher, a test, and a gift. They talked about the long wait and how the hospital room was unexpectedly warm. They also talked about how hands may express more than words and how the body knows what to do during delivery. They remembered the specific song of relief that came after the first cry, the modest, unchangeable marvel of new life in a world that often seemed to have few surprises left. So the story ended, not with a big, victorious headline, but with a slow, patient life. The baby fit into the family's shape, and the family moved around her in both small and big ways. The pair started to feel more like regular people because they were doing the everyday work of love, making meals, doing clothes, and reading aloud to a steadily growing name on quiet afternoons. Their public lives went on, but they were now balanced by a deeper commitment, the hard, continual task of parenting a kid with purpose. Different people would tell the story of the birth night numerous times, each time in a different way and with a different focus. For producers, it might be the dramatic climax. For fans, it might be the fairy tale conclusion. And for critics, it might be a scene to be looked at for motive and timing. But to Julia and Brandon, the story was still the same as it had been in that hospital room. A group of genuine people doing the real task of welcome a new life. The pictures and viral posts would stay in feeds and timelines, becoming a public artifact. But the truth of that night, the small silences, the shaky laughter, and the mix of fear and hope, would stay in their minds, a private place they could go to when they needed to be reminded that possibilities can come true, even after a long wait. In that way, the baby's arrival was more of a beginning than an end. It was an invitation to a life that required daily attention and gave daily rewards. It changed what the couple was worried about and put them back on a life that was measured not by events but by breathing and feeding, nightly vigils, and morning laughing. The child brought the family and their larger community together. They were a reason to celebrate, a source of tiny, steady obligations, and a reminder that people still make their own quiet miracles every day, even when there aren't any big news stories. This gossip is over. If you liked the video, then give your opinion in the comment box and stay with us by subscribing the channel. Thank you.